My dad told me a really interesting fact the other day that around this time of year, kind of late summer, birds lose their breeding feathers. They do a full molt to get ready for winter. Now, I don't know if it's just the power of suggestion, but I've definitely seen a lot more feathers around, more so than ever before. As a print artist, I'm quite used to using natural elements in my prints. I use feathers, I use leaves, and it's not uncommon to see me walking down my local high street, picking up pigeon feathers. I know, the shame of it. But today on the Virtual Village Hall, rather than showing you how to use feathers to print, we're going to go back to the olden days and I'm going to show you how to turn them into pens. We're going to use ink and we're going to make some sketches. So if that's not totally put you off, then I'm going to pop you down. I'll talk you through what you need and how to do it. So you need to first start off with your feathers. I've got a variety here. So make sure that they've been washed. So I use just an antiseptic soap to wash them, and then make sure that they're thoroughly dried as well. I've got a variety of pigeon feathers. I've got some crow feathers. That was a goose feather, which is what traditionally would have been used in Victorian times for your quills. I've also got, I think that could have been a duck, that could have been a goose feather, I'm not sure, but that's the sort of feathers that you want. So steer away from the tiny little ones and grab these larger ones. So we're going to use, that looks quite a good one, so we'll use that one today. You're looking for one that hasn't been damaged, that this part isn't damaged, and just use a craft knife. You just want to take off any of the feathers that are quite low. This one's quite good actually, but if you've got any that are down to about here, just take those off so that they don't interfere with the ink when we are sketching. Then all you need to do with your craft knife or a very, very sharp tiny pair of scissors is just to cut your feather on the diagonal. Do it really carefully. And if you can see there, you just want to create that sort of effect. So the ink will go up the quill, and then as gravity takes effect, it will come back down and it will drip off of here, and then that's how you'll be able to do your sketching. So easy as that. So that's our quill made up. Now I just want to talk a little bit about the ink. So very quickly, won't take long. This is the ink that I use. It's either drawing ink, sometimes called Indian ink. I like to use black, but you can use any colour you want. These inks come in at some really amazing colours, like from your kind of pastel shades right through to neon. So this is the sort of ink that I'm going to be using. Then paper, I don't use any special paper at all. This is just lining paper. So it's just a really nice kind of rough but thick paper. So it's going to take the ink very well. And all I've done is taken a few sheets there, sort of about half of an A5, I would say. I quite like doing these sketches small, but you might like to go larger. It's entirely up to you, however you like to work, but I prefer to work small. This is also really nice to do if you like sketching out and about. Go for smaller ones. It's quite it's quite easy to do as well. I just take a board like this. I've got my papers in there, and then I use that as a rest, and then that's how I do my sketching if I'm out and about. So it's quite nice fun al fresco. But if you don't fancy going outside doing it, getting people staring at you, then you can just bring elements from the garden or maybe from a little walk, bring natural elements in. So I've just been quickly out in my garden today, picked a few of these. They're sopping wet because I don't know about where you are in the UK or in the world today, but the weather is horrible. It's really dark. It really feels like autumn set in. So we're going to cheer ourselves up with some sketching. I've also got a few seed heads as well. They're quite pretty. If you don't have access to outside, then you could just use something from magazines, or maybe you've taken photos over the years. Just have a look at some of those that you've made, and you can absolutely use those as a resource material as well. So that's our pen made up, our paper and our ink. Now you can go straight in with this and just use the ink onto the paper. I quite like to give it a little bit of a background. So I like the natural colours. So what I'm just going to quickly show you now is how to add these just using watercolour. You could also use ink. I think some of these I think this was actually a very watered down ink. But watercolours will work fine, and I'm going to be using those this morning. So get a few pieces of paper if you're ready. How many I can fit on the screen. There we go. Save some papers as well, because we're going to be doing some practice on those. Move my drinking water so I don't end up with my brush in it. And then I've just got some watercolours here and some water. And I'm just going to go along and get those wet. I should have really done this before I came on. That's fine. Could also use a spray bottle. That's quite good to use. Let's just clear this. Okay, so just in my mixing palette, you could use a plate for this as well if you don't have something like this. I'm just going to put lots of water into there. We want a really watery mix. It's just a suggestion of colour, really. I've got a quite nice green that's already made up here, but if you want, go in, mix up some of your own colours. Then I'm just going to use, you can either use a really large brush, I say, well, not really large, just a larger brush. You could use a sponge maybe, or you could, I've done with it, but you could just use, no, oh, it's on the floor, just a piece of rag to apply the paint to these. And I'm looking at very, very natural ideas. I mean, you could even use the actual feather itself. I might have a go at that. Let's try that. I've not done this one before. I'm going to have to put this down, so I think I need 2 hands. Okay. So I'm just using the feather. Just to add a little bit of colour, give us a bit of background colour. And you could fill the entire paper, you could just do this in little blocks. That's pink. So if you're just joining us today, we are travelling back in time and we're turning feathers into drawing implements. Now I'm sure if you're a real purist, you would only use, if maybe a calligraphy artist, you would probably only use a goose feather for these, but this is really just a very experimental drawing technique, mark making technique, call it what you need to kind of take the pressure off. So I'm just using a mixture of feathers. I've got pigeon, I've got crow, and I have actually got a couple of goose feathers as well. So I'm going to make some more, another colour up. So I think I might go more on the kind of pink side. So let's clear that out and we'll start again. Okay, I might just take that down, it's a little bit too pink. A bit better. And let's use the feather again. Quite nice and subtle. And one of the reasons I enjoy using the feather in this mark making is that you don't have an awful lot of control over it. You've obviously got a little bit, but I quite enjoy that it's making me do things that I wouldn't normally do, and little happy little accidents are happening, or something happens and then I have to incorporate it into the sketch. So it kind of keeps you on your feet, and also you can end up I think it just gives you a little bit more confidence as well. And remember, no one ever has to see these, so if you don't like them, you can just either use them for something else, maybe collaging, sort of print over it, paint over it, or you could just throw them away. So there's absolutely no pressure with this sort of drawing or this sort of mark making. Okay, so that's our papers made up. And so I'm going to put those to one side, let them dry while we practice using the quill. And while I'm just setting up this next bit, please do pop into the comments, let us know where you're watching from today. Has the season really changed for you too? Because it really has here where I am in the UK. It's definitely more autumnal now. Okay, so this is the scrap paper. Just some, again, these little offcuts of lining paper which work really well. And we're going to have a practice in how it feels to make marks with the pen. So with your prepared pen, you want to dip it into your ink, and you want to get the ink flowing at first. So I knock a little bit of the excess off. Move that a little bit. I'm just going to put this down a bit so you can see it a bit better. And you'll notice that that ink starts flowing. Back in as you're running more out of ink. And I'm using this with, so the piece that we cut away is close to the page, so that will give you that sort of mark. And it's actually quite nice as it runs out of ink, the ink stays on either side of the quill, and you get these two little lines, so you're getting different sort of thicknesses as you're using the pen differently. I've put more weight on here, less here when it was quite wet with ink. So now we've got the ink flowing and we've tried a few of those. So now hold the pen or the feather more upright, and we're going to use the very tip. So it's a bit scratchy, you can really hear it scratching along, but that will give you another another sort of line. Now if you hold the pen further up the quill, or the feather further up the quill, you do have less control over it, and I quite like that, because naturally I am a little bit of a perfectionist, so it's quite nice that it takes me out of my comfort zone, but it's not long before you just can relax into it. So now try it with the other side, and we're just making marks, just finding how the feather works with the ink. So we've used sort of the cut bit, we've used the point, and now we're going to use the side. So this is going to give you something else. So very uncontrolled. And then if you leave a lot of ink, you could then use the tip just to scratch that out, and that will give you another mark entirely. So have a little play around with that for a minute or two if you want. You could, if you're watching this on record, then please feel free to pause it so you can have a little play with some of that. But what we're going to do now is go in and we're going to start doing some of those sketches. So pop that to one side. And don't forget, if you are watching this on record or you're watching it live and you haven't got time to do this today, then all you need to do is save the video. So if you find the 3 white dots, they're next to each other, they'll either be maybe in the top right or the top or the kind of bottom right, depending on what device you're watching this on. Find those 3 dots, press on that, and then you can save this video for later. And of course you can always share this video to friends, into craft groups, into drawing groups that you're sketching groups that you're in, so you can share it with others too. Okay, so these are some of the sketches that I've done previously. As you can see, they're very loose. I've allowed the ink to splodge around, and that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to allow the ink and the feather to make these marks. That's more of a kind of a landscape. That was just trying some stuff out. There, so just a few there, and also if you want to use different different feathers, so the thicker feather, you'll get a different line to another one. These are all of kind of a variety of drawings, different styles, just things that I was experimenting with, but always with this colour in the background. So hopefully these are kind of dry now. So let's see if I can find the driest. I've got a feeling that these are going to splodge as soon as I put the ink on. Okay, just let me do one little thing, but I think these are going to be a bit wet. So what I might do, I might show you just with a plain piece of paper. Let's just see what happens. Oh, it might be okay. No, we're definitely getting... Oh, I quite like it though. It's nice. I maybe won't show... I'm going to have a play with that afterwards though, actually, because I love it still wet, and it's creating these lines that are just spreading. But I'm going to show you on another piece of paper without this on. So wait for these to be totally dry. The ones that we prepared at the beginning, wait for those to be totally dry before you do your final pieces or your sketches. final piece that makes it sound that's a lot of pressure on it, doesn't it? These sketches. Okay, so I quite like this one. I'm gonna go for this one. So when you do a sketch, just take a moment or two just to look at what you're sketching or what you're drawing. Look at how the leaves on this one particularly, where they meet. So they're in pairs. They're quite wide at the bottom and narrowing, and they've got this beautiful flow to them. Also, they're not very straight. You can see they're quite curved. They've got very fine veins, and you can see the sort of the nodules here are quite prominent. Now, I'm not necessarily looking to put all the detail in, but it's just quite nice to have a look at the subject that you're drawing just for a few minutes, or just sort of a minute or so, just to get the idea. Let your eye follow the lines, just so you can get used to what you're going to be drawing. Another thing you can do if you don't want to think about the detail, nice little trick, is if you just squint your eyes, then that will take out any detail, and then that will just show you the shapes. It's quite a nice one to do as well. Just shows the shapes and also the tones. So that detail's sort of gone, and it's not confusing you or getting in the way. So I'm going to start my sketch now. I would just say this, I'm not looking for an exact representation of this leaf. I'm using it as a guide. That's my excuse anyway, if it doesn't look anything like the leaf. No, but really, I'm using it just as a guide, just to have a play around, just to do some sketching, really, some mark making. Now, I actually find it easier to hold my paper at a little bit of an angle. So let's just start my sketch. You might want to have a piece of paper just next to you as well, maybe just to take off excess ink. But it's also quite nice when the ink does things that you're not expecting. There we go. It's nice when the ink does things that you're not expecting, and then you can respond to that. So draw that first nodule. So I want to put some of those veins inside, but I want really thin, so I'm just going to clear the quill a little bit, and then just try this. I just want it really scratchy. So again, at this point, if you're getting a little bit hung up on detail, just squint, and it will take all that detail out, so you can just look at shapes and tones. Just got this larger leaf here just to finish off. So I'll darken the stem a little bit. And then we've got our first sketch. So let's see how we're getting on, if these are any drier. Not too bad, still not quite dry. But I tell you what I'm going to do. I think now I've shown you how to do it like this, we're going to do it onto here. It may, some of the ink might kind of splurge a little bit. I can't think of the right word. Splurge, that's a good word. It may come out quite a bit, but let's see. So let's go for a bit more kind of seed heady, I think. So I might try this. Here we go. Okay, so I'm not doing what I asked you to do, which is to spend a few moments looking at this, but just very quickly, it's made up of tiny little flowers, each in these little bunches. There's a little bit of leaf there. It's all curled up. So let's try this. So as you see, I'm holding the feather quite towards the top, so I've not got as much control as I would maybe with a pencil. I quite like it. You know, they're just really quick little sketches. I love these this leaf's all curled over. Oh, that's nice. A little bit of a splodge from the quill. So I've done the leaf quite a lot larger than it is in real life. As I said, I'm not really looking for exact representation. But I particularly like the way the leaf was all curling. So I've just spent a little bit of time doing that. So I'm going to do the seed head. So it's not going to be in proportion. Got one that goes here. So then I'm going to start just putting these little seed heads on, and they're just like little tiny cups. There's actually just a little bit of the flower. They've not quite gone to seeds yet. Just a little bit of flower on the little leaf there. And there isn't one here, but I just feel it needs balancing out a bit, so I'm going to just add another curled up leaf. A few of those splodges. And there you go, just a couple of very quick sketches using feather and drawing ink. So what do you think? Do you think it's something that you might like to try? It's a great way if you enjoy art anyway, or if you're just getting into it, it's a great way just to be more free about the sketches and the mark making that you do. So I hope that's really inspired you to give it a go. Please do share your photos with us as well on the Virtual Village Hall. If you do any of the activities, we always love to see people taking action, getting involved, and do send us photos so we can share them. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to show you that, and I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.